And so, yeah, without further ado, can I introduce James?
Yeah. Let me just breeze through. Here we go, talking about how we can do this perfectly. And then it's like, let's just walk through the everyday project. Oh, bye, Mohammed.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you. Ciao.
I'm sorry, Polly. My bad.
No worries.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about, the grassroots photo organizations that are making the Essentials possible. So that would be the Everyday Projects, a global community of visual storytellers using imagery to combat harmful misperceptions and to rise above persistent inequality in the visual media industry. We provide opportunities for our global community through structure, support, and direction for the diverse and worldwide range of everyday photography groups. And then again, I am so happy to be here with Polly Irungu, the amazing, the one and only founder of Black Women Photographers.
Danielle could not ask for a better co-host. Black Women Photographers is an organization I started in July 2020 that provides free opportunities and resources, portfolio reviews that we just discussed, grants, and other opportunities within the community. And again, I think Austin has been doing a great job. It's in the Q&A box. You can see our respective social handles where you can check out our organizations and give us a support online. And of course, if you've been a part of these sessions, please continue to share your takeaways on social. I've seen some great tags on IG, on the stories, or even some tweets as well. So keep those coming.
Yes, and just thanks again once more. A huge shout out to Photo Wings. Without Photo Wings, the Essentials and all of the previous seasons before would not be possible. So for those who are just joining, Photo Wings is a nonprofit organization dedicated to utilizing the power of photography to further deep thinking, communication, and action, which is totally everything we are doing and making happen right now through the work of our amazing speakers and all of you being here. And please also check out their website for a very extensive online content and their outreach programs to learn more about everything we're talking about here. Let's see, and just really quickly too, little shout out to everyone behind the scenes, Rebecca Gibeon, Austin Merrill, and Washira and Jogi, who are here just totally supporting, rooting, and all that good stuff. And Peter DeCampo as well, who is not here with us, but co-founder of the Everyday Projects. Honestly, it's me and Polly up here with the teachers, but there are so many people who went into making this happen. So we just want to make sure we're giving them a shout out literally all the time, because we don't want y'all to forget about them. And on that note, please, if you can, big, small, donate to Black Women Photographers. Polly is doing such an amazing job. Not to mention, she's like, did y'all know she's like the first photo editor for vice president? So somehow she's doing that plus managing Black Women Photographers, whose mission it is to support Black creatives worldwide. So please, any donation, big or small, will go towards supporting their initiatives and operations. And yeah, as Polly said, we've still got a great lineup for y'all. So we're just gonna breeze on through. Those are our socials. Follow us, tag us, like Polly said, etc., etc. And with that, although I see there's an issue here with my screen, so 1 second. 1 second, we gotta do this. We got to introduce James loud and proud properly with, ta-da! You can see that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. All right, cool. Polly, take it away. Now you can introduce James. Sorry.
No, fine. I mean, all of these speakers have such impressive, bios and bodies of work. And James is also included in that. He is a Guatemala-based documentary photographer and filmmaker focusing on post-war processes human rights abuses, migration, land tenure, and social conflicts in Mexico and Central America, but particularly in Guatemala, where his long-term project stems back to 2004. James has worked for publications such as National Geographic, Le Monde, the LA Times, the New York Times, NPR, and many others. And he regularly collaborates with NGOs, including Amnesty International, Oxfam, Human Rights Watch, and UNDP. He is represented by Panos Pictures and is a member of the Everyday Latin America organization. Thank you so much, James, for spending time with us today and sharing your expertise.
Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Hey, Danielle, so good to see you. Polly, so nice to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm a little bit nervous, I gotta be honest. That was such an amazing talk by Mohammed. Really, it's it's so great when we spend so much time alone, I think, in this profession, that when you hear colleagues and friends talk about themselves, it's been so inspiring, and it reminds you so much of why we're here, and it kind of gives you a boost. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
So how do we do this?
So James, we good. All right. So James, while you get ready to share your screen, I'm going to drop your website and all that good stuff. So I think there should be a little share screen on the bottom there for you. Do you see that?
Okay. Yeah. So desktop.
Maybe can you see?
Yeah, that's my desktop.
Yeah,
Okay.
perfect. Beautiful desktop. Wow, so much more organized than my own.
I cheated. I just grabbed everything and dumped it in a folder and said I'm just
I
gonna
do that
dump it. I was so
Oh,
embarrassed.
no. We're just demystifying everything and the essentials, y'all. Nobody has a clean desktop.
Nobody.
They do, they're lying. No, just kidding. I'm sure some people have a clean desktop, and that's cool too. Yeah. So yeah, just feel free to open up your presentation and get started. I'm going to drop your website and Instagram in the link here.
Okay. So basically, I wanted to just talk for a couple of minutes, basically about my career, because honestly, I sort of jumped into photography in a bit by accident. I think maybe a lot of us have, but I never really wanted to seek to become a photojournalist, which I'm or a classic photojournalist, in a sense that I was going to look for assignments. I landed in I was working in the human rights field for a few years, and I landed in Guatemala, which is a country that had suffered a 36-year war. And I noticed that nobody was really documenting the effects of the post-war in a in-depth way. So I'm just going to show a little bit of a slideshow while I maybe talk about my just my path, which I think might help people sort of understand it. That's okay. It's just gonna dump photos basically. So let's see. Can you see them?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So basically, while I was here, I was here for a year, and as I said, I started noticing that there was there was sort of a need for imagery, and I felt a lot of the communities were struggling with getting some of their information out as well. A lot of NGOs were trying to do work, and I think a lot of the media was having a hard time focusing on expanded information on what was happening. So I felt, so what happened is that can you actually see me there as well?
Yeah, you're
okay.
good. I know a webinar feels so weird because you feel like you're talking to yourself, but you are all good. If there's anything that seems out of place, we will let you know. So you're good, James. Keep going. Yeah, you're awesome.
Okay, great. Well, while I was here, I actually ran into two books. One of them is this one by a photographer named Jean-Marie Simon, and it's called Guatemala, Eternal Spring, Eternal Tyranny. She was here working with what used to be Human Rights Watch in the 1980s. She was here for 9 years, and she left this amazing visual document of the war. The war basically went from 1960 to 1996. it's really amazing. She never did anything else afterwards visually, but she was sort of working with NGOs and doing this documentary project. Then in the 90s and early 2000s, there was another photographer that's been here. He would also work with human rights first. His name is Jonathan Muller, and he did this book called Our Culture is Our Resistance. So I sort of got this idea that maybe it would be important to do something similar, but with in this particular new post-war era that was happening. So you know, I'd been interested in photography for many years. I was sort of an amateur photographer, and I decided to just give it a go. And I started basically first what was a blog, and I started contacting a lot of the NGOs that I had worked with during my human rights you know, era, and this is how I became really sort of you know, like an ally of them. So I realized that was a very first step of people that needed visual information. So I had my blog, which is, you know, I'm talking 2006 when I actually started my project. You know, back then there was no social media. So my first allies were basically, you know, the NGOs. Then I met a few other colleagues who sort of pushed me into the, you know, the photojournalism world, and I realized that maybe this was something that I wanted to follow upon. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how over the years I've remained tied to this particular project, which to me has become really my reason to become a photographer. And you know, maybe some drawbacks as well of like, when will this end, right? I mean, because we could talk about a project, like a long-term project, like what exactly is it? You know, how long should it last? You know, where should you do it and why you should do it? But I really personally think that you know, a long-term project is a personal statement on you, on who you are and what's important to you, not only as a photographer or an artist, but as a person. You know, something that's fundamental and important to you. And this issue here in Guatemala became fundamental to me, so much that I've been living here now for what, like 16 years. So yeah, okay, so I'm gonna stop this for a minute here, and I'm gonna start my presentation, which is very basic. I'm sorry, I'm not very good at these things, but so here's what I was mentioning, that, you know, that when I first arrived, inspired by Jean Marie Simon and Jonathan Muller, and my goal was to create a long-term documentary project focusing on the post-war effects and current conflicts, particularly from extractive industries, which I saw was really the main issue that was happening in the mid 2000s. So here's what I also mentioned right now. You know, what is it? How long should it last? Where should you do it? And why should you do it? I think that's, you know, those are questions that only you can answer. But I really think it will, you know, it's something that is a personal statement, right? Okay, so how do you create long-standing and solid relationships with communities or the issues? For me, you know, I've seen a lot of like wonderful long-term projects that are focused on maybe one particular you know, issue or one person or one family or one community. Mine, I felt, was a little bit wider, right? Because I was really trying to focus on a countrywide project. So I've sort of chosen a few communities that I've really continually like kept coming back to. You know, over the years, you know, constantly communication with the people there, with the local people there. Another key thing has been to really be well informed, right? I mean, I've read so many academic books, so many novels, I mean, everything, and then just completely, you know, meet everybody in Guatemala that can have an insight and that can eventually become an ally, not only to get information, but also to provide, right? Which has really been my goal always. I mean, I think I really became committed with letting the world know that what happened here in Guatemala. There was a genocide here, and I felt that it was really important to understand the past in order to understand a lot of the present issues that that are happening. We're going from migration, poverty, social conflicts. So also, to be really well informed on current events and issues, through articles and meetings. So this is just something key that when you're going to do a long-term project, I realize some people may not do something like I'm doing it in this particular, having like a geographic location, but hopefully you can get some ideas, right, from my particular path, and you can apply them to your long-term project. Okay, so how have I been able to find outputs and get funding and and create sort of allies, like throughout this path. So one thing that was clear to me from the get-go was that communities have more identities than the one you might be focusing on. So for example, maybe a community that I visited like suffered a massacre in 1980, but perhaps now they also have some other resistance issue, maybe because of a hydroelectric project, let's say. Then maybe they're also coffee farmers and they belong to a co-op. Perhaps there's there's also like few have been migrants. So instead of just documenting one issue in that particular community, I've gone over the years back and over and over as many times as I can, and trying to be able to view those places through different angles. And as such, well, I've been you pitch assignments on this or that. Of course, I have numerous communities to select from, right? So I mean, it's been a little bit easier over the years. So yeah, so obviously an assignment is an ideal because you get the output, you get to tell the world what's happening there, which is what you want. You get paid for it, and you get to go and add that particular work that you do in that time to your long-term project. The number two would be also, like as I mentioned, the connection with NGOs and NPOs has been very important for me. In a similar fashion, I mean, you also receive from them, let's say, work to go and document something. You also get to create and more visual work for your long-term project. And of course, I mean, in a way, you're also participating in some sort of solution, right? As most NGOs and NPOs try to do in different capacities, of course. Another key ally that I've found over the years has been academics, and I think a lot of colleagues don't use this source a lot. There are so many academics that might be working the same issue as you, or within the same region or communities, and they're interested in visuals, and they're interested in people that are on the field there, and many times they come as well. So I've been commissioned by academics many times, sort of as NGOs or editorial assignments would, to go do work for their book or for their research, or eventually you start doing work together with them. We actually just published a work, that has many images. This is one. It's called Testimonio. It's on extractive industries with a Canadian academic. So things like that can really help out if you find out which academics are working the same issues that you are, or in the same places. Others are commercial jobs. I mean, this can be a little bit iffy if you're working on a human rights project, of course, because you don't want to be on a negative end of an impact. But for example, like as I said, some of these communities might have a coffee co-op, and maybe you could find a way, perhaps, let's say maybe through somebody like Bloomberg, right, where you could pitch a commercial, let's say, or a business like like a pitch for an assignment, or and you can go and focus on their commercial, or on the business issue side of some of these communities. The other one would be fixing as well. This is not something I do very much, but I do believe that in some cases colleagues have had a different way, or a different output in a different manner and telling a story that's important to me. So I felt it's been valuable, for me to be able to participate in that. And of course, you get to go to the same communities that you're working on. You continue, that relationship with them as well. And instead of you publishing something, maybe, a colleague might do that, but, it's more than valuable. For example, I fixed a couple of times for the team of Vice News tonight, which, are an amazing, like, they do amazing TV coverage. On another occasion, my friend Natalie Kieser, for example, had I was doing something, had an IWMF grant from Nat Geo, and she asked me to fix for her, and I thought it was it was a no-brainer. It was awesome because obviously she has a different way of viewing things and an important outlet. So I thought that's worth it. And of course, fixing is work at the end of the day. So you get paid and you can continue using that money always. Whatever money I've always gotten through assignments or NGO work, I've used it for my long-term project in a way. So I've sort of, many times I've gone, of course, on my own without assignments to visit some of these communities or, for events, when they might call you and be like, hey, this is happening. And, nobody wants that pitch, but, I have to have like sort of a reserve economic, little, pot to be able to say, okay, this is important for my long-term project. I'm going to go without anybody, paying for it. And I think actually that's probably most of the time. But another thing that's happening too is that on a few occasions, I've actually led delegations. This has been for NGOs and for academic programs that, you basically become an expert. And I think people start, recognizing that you become an expert in a particular issue or field or region. And little by little, people will start looking for you. So, whenever I've led delegations, it's been good for me because I can go and use that moment to continue building that relationship with the communities and maybe even get a few images, here and there. So that's another positive thing. Something else that I did about 6 years ago is that I consciously said that I wanted to, move on from just still photography and become like a video, journalist as well, to do a little bit of filmmaking. And this expanded as well my assignments, my capacity to be able to tell the story in different ways and to be able to get more work, right, on maybe some of the same issues in the same places. So I think that was important as well. I think and maybe if I was just doing a video assignment, and if I was working on, I by being there, I could actually take a few more photographs, here and there, for my long-term project. So basically, all these 7 points that I've covered here have, in a way, allowed me to go back and get more photography for my long-term project, and also be paid for it. It's sort of a funding entry. So also, I realized that funding of your long-term project can be a lot easier if you divide it in sort of chapters. If you kind of make it, chapters don't have to be exact, but it can be like regions. It can be like smaller issues, right? So you can pitch on, you can do an assignment on this particular issue here, and then do work with an academic on a region there. And at the end of the day, they're all part of your long-term project. Obviously, you can do that through assignments, by pitching or receiving assignments. Grants are definitely one way as well. I mean, I felt like my project, when I started applying for a few grants at the beginning, I realized that it was too wide and people couldn't really grasp it. So I've been lucky to get a couple grants here and there, but I've been very more specific. Like, okay, maybe I want to focus on this particular issue, this particular community, and that way I can sort of cover that in this way. The other way has been producing booklets for NGOs. And for example, here's one that I did. This is also like a chapter. This is one I did on 2, let's call them states. This was with UNDP, and basically they paid me to go and develop this, some with my archive images, but then also some with new images that I wanted to do in these particular regions. And it's a historical memory on on some of these, in an area that I felt I had a bit of a hole, right? Another one, for example, this is the very first one I did in 2007. This was Oxfam paid me to do a mining resistance booklet, resistance in all of Central America, but obviously it included Guatemala. So right there, I was able to once again have an outlet and have income coming in. Amnesty also paid me to do one on just mining issues here in Guatemala. So this is what I was saying, by becoming an expert on the issue or region from your long-term projects, you will be sought after by editors or allies, and eventually creating a bit of a loop effect where people are looking for you and you pitch and they know. I had an editor one time at a review said, oh wait, you're the guy that does the disappeared projects on people that are disappeared. So I have a project in Mexico, but they disappeared. It's not really the one I've here, but it's like, I think people have in mind what you're good at. And I think Mohammed was talking a little bit about that. And I think that's important, for you to really, so I think long-term projects allow you to really create an identity of who you are, what's important to you, and people have that in mind. The fourth point that I kind of skipped was the photo archive. Also, Mohammed talked about this, right, of a business model. I think it's important to have one in a way. And for me, I realized that archive was a big issue. And so, I use Photo Shelter. And and I think it's a great way to get my archive out to people when people request, oh, like I want to license this image, instead of having like to go look for it and this. I mean, Photo Shelter, I'm sure there's other platforms out there, but it's really good and easy, and you basically send them a link and they pay with a credit card or PayPal, and it's super fast, and it's they get a contract. But also another thing that I've done is that I've sort of proposed subscriptions, I guess you could call them, to especially NGOs, who I've noticed that they started coming back and be like, oh, we have an annual report coming up, and we like to use a couple of these images, and we want to put some on our web. So I told them, listen, how about you pay me a flat rate for a year, and then you have access to every photo that you need. So and for me, when they ask me, hey James, we want these 5 images, it literally takes me 5-10 minutes to just collect them in Photo Shelter, put them in a gallery, in a secret gallery, and send them over to them. And that way they don't have to deal as well with trying to find the money for what project is going to pay for this photo and that, and sometimes the amounts might be really small. So instead of having a flat fee, I have an income coming in, a set subscription, let's say, money coming in, and they have access to pretty much everything that I'm putting up. And nobody's ever gonna ask you for 1 million photos. I mean, people are pretty conscientious. So let me see if I missed anything here. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't know if it's been too short or long, or if it's okay. I'm gonna stop sharing my
That's right. There,
stop
because that way we get to some of these great questions. And one of the things what I first loved when you first opened up your talk about is just how you saw the need in your own backyard, right? Documenting what was local to you, because as we had discussed in previous classes, just before us, like a lot of the opportunities in this industry, and unfortunately, is in the West, New York, LA, and that's not always feasible for those who are internationally based. And then photographers, they feel like they have to move to the US, and not just the US, they feel like they have to move to the two of the most expensive places in the US, New York and Los Angeles, California. And because that's where they see the opportunities or getting the attention or whatever the case may be. But then if we leave our local areas, who documents that, right? And I just want to say that I just loved that point. It really hit home for me. And how did you, I guess, make everybody else care, if that makes sense, right? Because I think sometimes people think, oh, why would anybody else care? Maybe this is just too specific, too, local. how did you go about that, and what made you stick to this long-term project?
Oh, thank you, Polly. Well, I mean, it's funny because I'm actually from LA as well. I mean, I'm from Mexico City, but I went to high school and college in LA, and I left. Um, let's see about your question. Honestly, for me, this issue became like such a passion. As I said, I was not a photographer yet. And I finished my year working with that human rights organization that was here working in these same issues. Really, they were working with post-war, like victims of a lot of times like survivors or organizations that were trying to bring justice here, and also with some of the current issues that were happening back in the mid 2000s. And I remember I went back to LA for a couple months, and I just worked temp jobs and saved a bit of money. And I said I need to try and go back, and bought a digital camera, and I came here with money in my pocket for 4 months. And I said, okay, I'm going to start this blog, and I'm going to start just putting out what I felt were photo essays just out in the world, and I'll see what happens. And I literally had money just for 4 months. And within 2 months, I had a grant. I had somebody tell me, hey, you know what, we really like what you're doing, and we want you to keep going. And here's, I also had like Amnesty call me up and say, we want to do an exhibit of these photos up in Canada. And everything just fell into place. So it's not so much like I have this key on how people cared. I just realized that people really needed this information from the ground, and visually particularly. I myself was always a very visual person, where I remember looking at magazines as a kid, or paper, and it just just going like this. And whenever I would see an image that I liked, then I would start reading on it. So I felt maybe there's somebody else that can do that. And today, with a digital, like with the cyber world, being so accessible to everyone, maybe that can happen. So I realized that people did care, just because of there was so much, like outpour into what I was doing. And I mean, I look at some of my images from back then, and it's a bit embarrassing. I'm thinking like, gosh, how could I ever publish that? But it didn't really matter. It was more about the issue. I'm not Guatemalan. I'm actually from Mexico City and LA. That's another long story that could probably take up another webinar, but regardless, now I'm here in a country that's not mine, but yeah, I just felt like, something told me like there is a need to do this, and I went with my gut feeling, and things have just sort of, but 18 years later, I'm still here.
That is amazing. How did you, like you said, you moved there, now you're still there almost 2 decades later. How did you first like build community and find a way to just like make, Guatemala your second home now? For those who, I know there's some members in my community who want to move abroad. And how did you go about that? What steps did you take to just, provide whatever you may need, or don't even know what you may need yet, but how did you manage that?
Yeah, well, once again, honestly, was not something that I thought of. I mean, I applied for a 1-year job here with a human rights organization that I felt was doing really important work. And it was during this year that I really became attached to a lot of the movement, let's say, that was happening here. So when I left, I said, I need to continue connected somehow. And I thought, well, the only thing that I could think about was, taking photos and putting them out there. So, Mohammed, once again, I really liked this talk, by the way. It was really great. He said something really interesting, and that a lot of people, a lot of his colleagues come from maybe like social sciences, and I do as well. I studied, cultural geography. So yeah, I was looking for something else. I was not like, photography was never really my passion. I'm not a news junkie. I have a lot of friends here that, photographers that are just like, oh, something's happening and they got to be there, and they got to be there. And I really admire that, and I really appreciate it as well, because, I'm the first one looking at the photos, but that's just not me. Like I felt like I really have to, I think one of the key elements to the reason why maybe my career has sort of like sustained is that I think I've been true to my interests, and I think that really shows on the work that you put out. So whatever your interest is, if you want to, one of my best friends, for example, is an AP photographer, and I think it's amazing the work that he does, and that's really what he likes to do. He likes to go from one place to another and cover the news and put them out there, and he's extremely successful. And but that's just wasn't me. So I think when you get into this, I think it's important for you to realize what's going to work for you and go with it, because otherwise it's just not going to be sustainable.
So true. Go ahead, Danielle.
You're like, oh no, I saw Danielle go off mute. Everybody get ready.
I'm trying to do better at that. I think by day 2 I should learn.
No, come on. No. I'm just like, no, I'm kidding. We just there are lots of questions coming in, but we got plenty of time still. So, but I'm going to couch 2 questions in one, so we can like, so, and by the way, James, beautiful presentation. You're amazing. You talked a lot about like, I don't know. Come on, that was amazing. I hope you're seeing in the chat, everyone complimenting your photography.
Oh, thank you.
You are such a pro. Like, oh man, lots of things I learned, and just very, and all of you and your dedication to your work. So yeah.
Thank you.
None of that. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so question 2 and 1. How do you get your foot in the door with NGOs? Sometimes it's hard to get that work published if it's been funded or supported by an NGO. So how do you navigate that? And then building off of that, the second question would be, considering the importance of relationship building over the course of your long-term work, can you speak to the importance of learning how to wear different hats? Because if you're, for example, working with the community, NGOs are totally different, then academics are totally different, and then the communities, and then the editors. I mean, you're dealing with all types of different people. So how do you shift those gears smoothly? So to recap, foot in the door with NGOs, how do you navigate publishing work in an editorial outlet if it was funded by an NGO, supported by an NGO? And then how do you navigate all these different types of folks and interests smoothly?
Yeah. Okay. Getting a foot in the door. I mean, it's very similar to speaking with editors. I mean, basically, I remember making a massive spreadsheet, just, digging through the internet and, who's doing what do they do? It's just like editorial, right? I mean, you see, what an editor might publish, what a publication's, visual language is like, and see if you'll fit, and what they do. So it's the same thing. I went digging for hours and days, and I felt that, what, is also, NGO work and NPOs can also obviously, a lot of us have our a bit of doubts and, some of the reasons and, the way they apply their resources and, the work they're doing, is so, you kind of have to balance that as well a little bit. But yeah, basically getting foot in the door is knocking. I mean, there's nothing else, or going into their offices and saying, look, I'm working on this. I see that you're doing this. Why don't we collaborate? Obviously, a lot of the work, if you're commissioned for work for an NGO, it's very specific. They might tell you, hey, we want a few portraits of this and we want this. But if you're there, you can do other images that are not necessarily going to be given to them or published through them, and they can be yours. You know what I mean? Like for your particular work. A few images maybe that I've also, it depends what sort of contract you have. I mean, if an NGO gives you, a contract where you cannot use images for anything else, and that makes sense, that's fine. But it's fine. I mean, maybe, I already made a relationship and I can come back. And I, or maybe, I took a nice landscape if the contract is open and I can use my images for something else. And I took a nice landscape that can work for a particular story that I'm doing, and I can use that, right? I mean, why not? I mean, there's nothing that says I can't use it, something. Yeah, you do have to be very careful with the ethics on this, of course, both professionally and also, on always, being true, especially when when putting work out, and editorial work, journalism and NGOs are different work, but they are in the same location. They can be in the same location about the same issues. So that at least it kind of helps maintain that. So I hope that kind of helps explain a little bit. And what was the second part of the question?
No, there was another part, but this is another part. You mentioned with NGOs that you have like a fixed flat fee determined for a year. How did you go about that? I know it's so hard figuring out fees and then figuring out fixed fee. And some people, we often think that nonprofits may not have money, but they do. So
they do.
Talk to us about how you navigate that. And then Danielle will go to the other part.
There are just so many questions. We're like a ping pong. We're like, can you dodge? Can you dodge?
Yeah, actually, putting like dollar amounts on certain things is always difficult. It's always going to be complicated. And I've come to the point where I realize, okay, we need to be careful. We all know we don't want to be on a race to the bottom, right? Like competing with other colleagues and stuff. On the other hand, we want to make this a sustainable profession, where we feel we get paid for what we do, while also so for example, with my subscriptions, I honestly ask people, I ask them, hey, how many images you think you're going to be using? They see what I charge for licensing one image, which of course is, these fees can be quite high, but I always feel like, volume, like a lot more, makes it a lot easier for everybody. So, and I try to work with people, I always try to work with my clients. And so for example, with my archive ones, I have, a few of these clients maybe will use 10, 15, 20 images per year. So I ask them, hey, can you pay equivalent to, let's say, $100 a month, let's say $1,200 a year, and then you can have them like accessible anytime you need. I mean, may not be that much, but at least it's like, a set, amount for me that I know it's coming from a few people here and there. They might have, and they're going to feel like, oh, we don't have to go looking for things, and a few of them actually have come back and asked me, you know what, you don't have photos of this, but we would need photos of X or Y thing. Can we pay you to go and make them for us? And it's so that's the thing, it's just basically working with people on how, instead of, I don't believe in these sort of like set established fees, because I think that's just like limiting. But I also feel like you have to know when, okay, you know what, like you have to have at least this, to be able to work with me, or to be able to use my work or whatever.
No, that is so true. And Annie mentioned, I think it was Annie yesterday, mentioned about like the different line items in a budget that they may need in order to determine their fee. And you mentioned earlier about fixers. What is a fixer for those who may not know? And then how do you work with them?
Okay, a fixer tends to be mostly a local journalist or a local expert who might help outside journalists come in and work in that particular issue or region. Whenever I've done fixing, I've provided, some of the tools that I have. I mean, for example, I've told people, hey, I can go with you and I can make the connections, and I can set up some interviews with X or Y people, or, what's your story about? What do you need? Oh, these are the issues that I know. I know this particular person who you might be able to interview. I can take you there. I can provide you safety, also information, right? Because I've been there many times. I know what it's like, so I can really tell you, what you need, how dangerous it can be, or how safe. Also, on a few occasions, I provided interpretation as well. Because truth is, like, some outside journalists may not speak Spanish, so I can do that. Or yeah, so that's basically fixing, right? I mean, fixing on the ground for other journalists who come in. And like sometimes I think having outside people may not be the best option for a particular issue, but I do feel it's important to have different voices tell the same story or the same issue. So I do think it's valuable as well. When I remember there was a time when I wasn't getting assignments, maybe about 10 years ago, and I was always so like, God, why are they sending this particular photographer here, to do this story when I'm here, But I realized that maybe I hadn't done enough work to be able to put myself out there, like in the eyes of editors. But now it's like, okay, maybe a local person can tell a story and an outside person can tell a story for their audience, and I do think there's value in that as well. So that's why when I realized that maybe hey, I'll do fixing on this particular case because I think it's important to tell it.
Yeah, I just want to, Priyanka in the chat just shared an essay for Columbia Journalism Review on the politics of who is a fixer. I haven't opened it or read it, but I can already imagine kind of maybe what Priyanka is getting at in that essay. So I wanted to just build on the idea of a fixer as a local journalist and talk a little bit about how do you protect your own ideas as a fixer / local journalist? And have you ever tried to push for a credit or byline as a fixer / local journalist? I've heard of people sort of making that was kind of their foot in the door to say, well, I was a local journalist on this story, I can write, I can do all of this. So now give me the assignment, give me an assignment. So how do you kind of navigate that area of protecting yourself in that regard?
Gosh, honestly, I haven't done that much fixing, to be honest. It's not something that I do. I've done it on just a few occasions, but very specifically, like I said, for stories and colleagues that I knew personally, and that I felt that their particular way of telling the story was going to be very valuable and different than what I could do. So I honestly, I'm not an expert on fixing, so I would not know that.
Cool. There was something you said, you were like when you were talking about rates, you were like, at the very least, I expect this. And I was like, so y'all, at the very least, not free, not free,
No,
not
never.
free.
Never.
No.
Yeah. On the contrary, when you do free stuff or when you give free images, people don't respect your work. That's always when trouble arises. So never, ever do anything for free.
Yeah. Sorry, Colleen.
No, I said sorry. There's like a follow-up to that. Because we always say that, and I think for those who may be starting out, it can be intimidating saying like, this is my rate, like let's stick with it. I'm not like moving, inching, nothing. This is my number. The person asked, how did you develop your business model? You mentioned that photography is not even something that you were even caring about, right? So how did you make it a sustaining practice for you?
It really was a bit of a, like trial and error. And also, I immediately connected with people, like another quote from Mohammed, I think it's my fourth, but, it was so important what he said, you need to have a community. And I developed a community right away, and photographers who really opened their arms and saw what I was doing and said, okay, look, I'm gonna share this with you, and I'm gonna share that. And also, like, you actively going out, right, to workshops. Right before the pandemic, there's been quite a few years being in Guatemala is quite complicated. There's hardly anybody here. There's like 2 or 3 colleagues, that I can honestly call and be like, hey, that I can see face to face. So I was making a point of annually going to a festival, going to a workshop, going to a photo review to at least be able to. That's how I met Danielle in in New York, actually. So like, and this is how you start like knowing how to navigate the business, right? By seeing and sharing what other people are doing, what your colleagues are doing, and I think that's really the best way to do it. Just share and some trial and error and some ideas. Like this idea of the subscription was something that just kind of came up to me, and it's worked. And I've shared it with a lot of people. So get some use out of your archive, because I think our archive can sometimes be a little bit lost. We don't really, and it's quite easy if you're somewhat organized and just, every time I come back from the assignment, or if I go out and take photos, just a few photos and put them in there, right? And organize it. And it's there and it's available.
Just want to flag that we are so popular. You are so popular, James, that we attracted a troll. Isn't that so exciting? Like you're big time when a troll comes into the chat. So if the troll comes back, just ignore the chat. Don't engage with the troll like I did. Do as I say, not as I do, and we'll just keep flowing. Let's just not even pay attention to the trolls. They got too much time on their hands. So since we, and thank you to Rebecca, Polly, everyone behind the scenes for getting rid of that. Anyways, so since we are talking a lot about personal projects, and you said you've been working since what, 2006
on this one? Yeah.
I mean, that's just so amazing, man. This is so much dedication, passion. Like, yeah, there's a lot that goes into doing a long-term project for that long. So I would like to kind of delve a little bit into some topics about, for example, how do you navigate consent when you're working on long-term projects? Do you use release forms? And then what is your self-care practice to decompress after photographing these heavy, painful situations time and time again? Would love to know more about that.
Consent, honestly, I think consent can be in some of the communities that I work, which, maybe, Spanish is not even their first language. I work in indigenous communities, mostly here in Guatemala. And I think, the whole issue of writing, signing papers can be almost violent, to be honest. So, I mean, I kind of go with the old school way. I mean, if people are allowing me to be there, obviously I don't push myself into anybody. I also felt like people want to tell their story. People, are always, I mean, very, very like appreciative of somebody caring and taking the time to be in there and spending time with them and telling their story. So, and I take back, since I do go back, I sometimes take back, like this booklet, for example, that I did with the UNDP, like the project was specifically to be able to take back to the communities so they could have somewhat of a physical, memory, like visual memory, so what I proposed to them, I said, listen, there's these two areas where I want to be able to, to take, these images, and I want to create new ones. So can you pay me to create new ones and create, pay to put this booklet, and then we'll eventually take it back. It was also, it worked out for them because they were having, they were like the Ministerio de Educación, what would you call that? The Board of Education, the National Board of Education was starting also a new project on talking about or teaching about the war in classrooms. So this was a perfect booklet as well that the UNDP said, you know what, we're gonna be able to push it back. So consent to me is mostly no. I mean, I don't ask people to write things unless some particular NGO or even more and more like some editorial assignments ask you to sign things, which but I honestly feel like that doesn't always work. I mean, I could see how that could work in North America because of the laws of the culture, but yeah, I don't do that here. And decompressing, well, yeah, I mean, I think we all, I don't know. I mean, I have a family, so I think that's enough to take me away from reality, from that particular reality, to just jump into another one, and that's probably enough.
I'm like, family, really? I'm a new mom. That's how you decompress. I don't know if I buy that, James. I saw you in Guatemala City. Your kids were all over you. I'm just kidding. Kids are awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I mean, it just sets a whole new mindset on life in itself, and so
totally. I was just
don't
kidding.
worry. Once they get a little bit bigger, you'll see what I mean.
I don't believe anything anyone says about parenting anymore. Anyway, we digress. Polly, what other, we've got still a lot of questions and thankfully some time. So let's get into some more questions here.
Yeah, there's a great one here. Thank you for the lovely presentation. Did your pictures and relationships with the community you built ever push for leaders to take a stand against the Civil War?
I don't like to be what do you call it? Like, I mean, I hope that my work sort of, like inspires people to continue what they're doing, but no, I don't think my work inspires, the locals. On the other hand, I mean, it's people are doing what they're doing, and I'm just there, to document it and let the world know what they're doing. But I'm hoping that my work affects, let's say, the outside of the communities, right? I mean, maybe Guatemala and like most Latin American countries is a very centralized place where you have a capital city that lives in a certain way and thinks of a certain way, and then the rural areas are a bit different, and of course, like, the outside as well. I mean, like, for example, one issue right now that I think is happening a lot is the migration issue with Central Americans coming to the US, and I think there's a lot of ignorance in the US on why they're going. So I hope that my work, in the historical, issues and the current issues that they're facing, shows why they're doing it. And perhaps this can change a bit on the vision from the outside on why they're leaving, and what can be done. So
You mentioned, when we say long-term projects, I did not realize it'd be 2006 long-term project.
Hey, I have a lot of friends that tell me, you know what, you gotta end this
Like,
now.
y'all can do the math, but I was thinking, oh, long-term, he'll say 4 years. That's cute. Like
Can
2006.
let's coin a new term. Let's never-ending project.
Yeah.
Never-ending project focuses on.
Right. So I guess like the question here is, what does your research process look like? How do you navigate that? I see that in the question, and how do you, just like, two, how do you also, continue to do this project and not burn out? When do you feel like it'll be done? Is it never done? Walk us through this.
No, of course, I have gone through numerous moments where I've said, that's it, that's it. I'm throwing the towel. It's over. I don't want to have anything to do with this anymore. But no, I mean, my goal, I mean, well, a lot of these issues are dynamic and they change. Nothing is static at the end of the day. So there's always new things. Some resistances might end, and then I want to tell about how they ended, and then a new one might arise, or there might be like perhaps a massive trial, like that has become like the result of a lot of years of work that I've been covering. So I feel, hey, maybe I gotta cover this one as well, and then there's a new type of repression that's happening. So I think I really think that I'm telling sort of like the story of these particular years of this country, and this is what I said that I saw in the other two books. Right before the pandemic, I was lucky enough to win a scholarship to do a book. What do you call it? ¿Cómo se dice maqueta? A book dummy. And I thought, okay, this is it. This is going to be it. But then the pandemic came, so here I am stuck with my dummy that I have not been able to publish. So if there's any publishers out there that want to talk to me about, please, so I can maybe like wrap this up, at least, let's say, with my, I do feel like I'm coming to an end. I feel like I really should wrap this, in a book and say this is it, because there's a lot of outputs, right? I mean, there's a lot of different outputs that you can show your work. But I do feel like I want to have a book and say this is it. And of course, maybe, if I'm stay here, I'll probably continue to pitch assignments or working with NGOs and some of these subjects, but maybe I'll say, hey, you know what? I covered this year to this year, this particular issue, and it's over.
I'm like, wait, James, you don't have a book? What?
No. I
Yeah,
don't.
that I'm like, but for those of you, in addition to James, who want to learn more about bookmaking, we actually have a class on that coming up. But we still have time for a couple more questions for James. So you just touched on this idea of sort of, not in this answer, but the one before, about sort of this idea of like photojournalism versus activism, or photojournalism and activism. And I think a lot of people, especially who work on never-ending projects about certain issues, sometimes you kind of feel like you might be stepping in sort of those both spaces. You sort of already answered that, saying, you just hope that, you're traditional in the sense that you make the work, you put it out there, and hope that change happens as a result of that. So if there's anything else that you'd like to mention on that, go ahead. But it also kind of flows into this other question someone had about, oftentimes when photographing communities or people, journalism is the thing that a lot of, even look at us, we're all just doing this like master class on journalism because we're like, what is this? How does this work? So a lot of people we photograph may not know like that there's this thing in journalism called ethics, and you can't pay people to make your work or to be published. And I'm sure, as a lot of us have, you come across that, well, and will I be compensated for this? What are you going to give to me for this? So have you ever come across those questions, and how did you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, to go back to your the first part, I don't see myself, I don't see photography as activism. I see it more as education. I have always felt like my project is more like an education project. And what I mean is like, life education for people to be able to learn about something, and then they themselves can act differently, right? And I think that's just knowledge or whatever. So that's what I meant by that. With regards to the ethics, when working with communities, I mean, the first thing I've ever done the first time that I've been to places is, to gather people and tell them exactly what I want to be doing. Listen, I'm working on this issue, and this is what I want to do, and I want to publish these photos, and I just, if you're interested in me telling your story, let me know. If you don't want your photo taken, that's fine, let me know. And there's going to be no money. I cannot guarantee you, any, I don't say anything else, but a lot of times, like, academics or NGOs have seen my work and gone in to do things, but that I'm not going to tell them beforehand, hey, somebody might come and do this, because that's just creating false expectations. I really just tell them right away, like, I just want to tell your story. Is this important to you? And in my case, most of these communities are so forgotten, by the state, by the Guatemalan state, by, or are so remote or isolated that, they understand that, that, oh, this could be, thank you, even if it's just, catharsis, or if it's, or some of them might realize, hey, this might help us in a way. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Yes, all of that about, we keep, the previous teachers have also touched on this, be honest, be transparent, be open, ask questions, do not be afraid to just put it all out there. The worst that can happen is an editor doesn't respond or says no, or you get a rejection. Is the worst that can happen. I think, if not doing those things can set you up for creating, an authentic work, and sort of paving a path of inauthenticity. So yeah, thank you again for bringing that up. I think we have time for a couple more questions. Polly, did you see any that point out to you? I know we've got a couple here. Someone recommends James checking out the photo book Mayan Healers by Fran Antman.
Yes, I've seen it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so there's one about just tech, I guess, gear tech. When you're traveling to these various places, how do you secure equipment while on assignment?
Gosh, I never thought about that. Well, no, I mean that's not true. I mean, to be honest, like, I don't have insurance. It's almost impossible for me to get, like photo insurance here. It'd be so expensive. My equipment is not that expensive. But one thing that I stopped doing, for example, is traveling in public transportation many years ago. I thought, okay, I'll either rent a car or take my car or take a taxi or have somebody drive me, like getting back and forth safe to a place. And, I felt that was sort of my insurance, so that's basically it. Besides that, yeah, and my equipment is not that expensive. I think at the end of the day that, I'm a bit of a minimalist. So, I just realized there's one point that I didn't talk about that I wanted to mention, and it was about grants. I think a lot of us who are in photography are very focused on the photo specific grants, this particular one or this particular one. But I was very lucky early in my career that, a particular foundation that was actually funding one NGO that I was sort of close to, they were interested in just taking proposals. So I told them, listen, you know what, I have this photo project and I publish in a blog. I mean, imagine a blog, I mean, it was like, so I don't know what it could be now, but it could be a book later. It could be, I don't know, whatever you may think of. But you can go to other, yeah, like foundations or organizations and pitch your project. So be a little bit creative on that. And they said, yes, of course. How much do you need per month? 3 years, okay. I was like, wow, I mean, it was pretty amazing. So think outside the box when you have let's not just stick to, oh, I didn't win this prize, I didn't get this grant, it's over, I'm never gonna be able to do this project. No, I mean, there's so many different ways that you can really go on and fund or produce work that you want to do.
So true. Um, okay, there's another question here. You mentioned, I mean, we've actually been mentioning this in various classes as well, but when you're working on a long-term anything, at what point, do you have like outside influences? Like, do you get feedback and ask for opinions and ask for an edit and critique, like that outside perspective? At what point do you like take that in, but also still maintain your vision within, your project? And how do you even protect, your vision as well? When you're working on this for so long, you're bringing light to this issue. Who's to say, somebody else doesn't go down there and try and do what you're doing? So how do you protect your vision and your work?
For me, I have a lot of colleagues who work on these same issues as well, maybe in a different way. One of my best friends here, he focused on one community and he's done an unbelievable job, telling the same story through one community, right? As I said, I mean, I had, everybody knows what I've been doing for 15 years and nobody else has decided to do it because I don't know, maybe they don't want to or they can or whatever. I mean, I don't know, there's so many elements that go into that. But I feel like, the more we talk about this is, the more the issue gets out there. And that's what's really important to me. I do a lot of other assignments that don't have to do with this. And, I do some commercial work sometimes. I have some commercial clients that I've developed over the years, and that's helped me, also in my business model. Because outside of these communities that I work with, like I just came back from a job in Peru and one in Mexico, doing commercial work that keeps me going with my particular project, right? So yeah. I forgot what else we were saying, sorry.
No, you're saying it. It's like how you maintain and protect your vision, while still like also,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, also one thing, I mean, I don't know if, like when I showed my slideshow, I showed like, I don't know if you could tell, but somewhere black, black and white mixed with color photos. And this is something that happened to me a few years ago. I realized that, at some point I came into like a creative crisis. I was like, this is it, I hate my photos. Like, I feel like I go into these places and I come back with work that's just like, it's not really what I want to say. So I decided, for example, to do a parallel, like black and white square iPhone project of the same places and the same issues. And then, eventually I talked to like a few people and said, I always thought there were two separate projects. They said, no, these go together, and these can work really well together. And, and you start thinking, wow, once again, thinking outside the box, right? Like you always told, oh no, either you do it color or you do it black and white, but then maybe there are times when it can work. And also, yeah, what you mentioned about, with community, I think is super important. I mean, I share my work with friends. I do have friends, that I'd be like, hey, listen, I just went and did this, can you help me just, like spot a few images that you think are the strongest, or what do you think tells us? So, and then a lot of friends do the same with me, right? So exchanging, obviously, like what people tell you, their opinions will be, you kind of have to like just take it in, but at the end of the day, you have to trust yourself, right? I mean, somebody might tell you, no, this is the best photo, but then because you were there and what you want to tell, and yeah, so yeah, so I do share my work with other people, and I love when people share their work with me too, because I think I learned so much too. It's a big input for me.
I love that. I know we're at time and there's still some great questions, but thank you everyone so much for tuning in. I do want to ask James, because you already touched on this, like you've been doing this project for nearly 20 decades.
What is math? What is math?
It seems like 20 decades.
I'm so sorry. I just stressed you out. You've been doing it for nearly 2 decades. 16.
Polly, cut the mic.
Yeah, I'm just gonna remove myself from panelists. You've been doing it for 16 years. You hinted that there may be a book. What could we be looking forward to next? How can people support you and your work?
Oh gosh, yeah, maybe buy the book when it comes out. I don't know. If you're into, or no, I mean, like I said, I really think that, like sharing, caring and learning, that's why I say, I think I see photography as education, right? Just learning about the issues, it's really key, because that really can change so many things that we don't even think about, policies or attitudes or whatever. And I'm hoping that, I always feel like my work is a hook, a hook to inspire somebody to do something else, or, to,
I
yeah.
love that.
So
That was beautiful. I hope you are seeing the comments in the chat. You've definitely inspired people here listening. So thank you so much for taking time to share with us.
thank
Yes.
you. Thank you both.
Oh, James, you're the OG. You're amazing. I've learned so much. You've talked about ethics. I mean, you have touched on every single point with graciousness, and yeah, you're just.
Oh, did he know? Like you connected the thread from the previous classes. Like I loved it.
All right, I gotta take care of a troll, Polly. They're back, so if you want to wrap us up, that'd be awesome. But thank you, James, so much, y'all. I'm just like, we're just so popular with these trolls. I just can't believe they want to hang out with us.
That is hilarious. Well, thank you very much, and
Thank you,
really,
James.
thank you for all the efforts, and thank you for everyone behind. And okay, I'll let you go because we're running out of time.
Thank you, James. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
All right, cool. Polly, you want to do some little housekeeping stuff before we take a quick break?
So yeah, y'all, this is our second class of the day in our 2-day summit workshop series powered by Photo Wings. So we're going to take a short 30-minute break. So be back in 30 minutes, stretch, get some food, whatever you may need to do. And we'll be back with 2 great speakers talking about everything you need to do about how to make a book from start to finish. They've been through the process. They know what worked, what didn't, and they're going to share that process with us. So please come back in 30 minutes, and we're looking forward to that. Again, these sessions have been made possible by Photo Wings. So we're so grateful for that support. If you missed out on the sessions, they're being recorded, and they will be transcribed in French and Spanish. And for those who may not know what Photo Wings is, it is a nonprofit whose goal is to help photography to be better understood, created, utilizing, and saved. So don't worry, you guys. We will be back in 30 minutes. Okay. And I think Danielle's dropping the links in the chat for you to check out the respective organizations, Everyday Projects, Black Women Photographers, and Photo Wings.
Yes. Thanks, everyone. Let's take a quick break, go get some coffee, and we'll see you in a sec. We'll see you at 1:00 p.m. EST time. So that's exactly 30 minutes. All right. We're going to leave the webinar running, but come back. All right.